On this week's episode of the Teachers Off Duty podcast, we're getting warm and fuzzy talking about all the lessons that our students have taught us. So stay tuned.
Get ready to cry.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Teachers Off Duty podcast. Before we dive into this lovely episode, big announcement. Today is the day that the Saved by the Beach Comedy Fest is live. It is on sale. Buy your tickets. Get ready for a lovely experience in the Riviera Maya, Mexico. It's lovely. It's beautiful. We're so excited to have everybody there. Here's what you can expect when you go. So, first of all, we will have 2 live recordings of the podcast. 2 live recordings. It's going to be fun. You get to see us on camera, off camera, chat with us a little bit. It's going to be beautiful. And the resort itself is an all-inclusive luxury beach resort. Trust me, I've been to this resort a number of times. It is incredible. It's awesome. Great food, great drink, great people, great service. You are going to feel like you are in a palace for kings and queens. And board teacher comedy tour shows will be there all the time. Okay, we're gonna have a bunch of different comedians that are performing, gonna make sure you are laughing till you're crying. It's gonna be awesome. We got amazing game shows, competitions, and other awesome activities hosted by different comedians. And we've got off-site excursions around the ancient Mayan ruins of Cancun. Set sail for some snorkeling events. It's gonna be sweet. Nothing like snorkeling out in the middle of the ocean.
Beautiful.
Trust us, it's gonna be safe. We got pool parties. I am a pool party fanatic. I love just chilling in the pool, having the DJ just house music, just feel it in my bones. It's my Eastern European genetics. All of a sudden, you play some house music, get me a little bit of dranky drank, and I just have a ball. And we have open mic auditions for a spot to perform your own comedy set. So if you're thinking to yourself, I'm a teacher, I'm funny, I want to get up and perform, now is your chance to try. So spots are limited, so don't wait to reserve your spots because this is going to sell out super quick. If you're thinking to yourself, where do I go to get tickets to this? Where do I go to get my room and all that stuff? Check the link in the description, okay? If you're watching on YouTube, click there. If you are listening to the podcast, here's where you are going to go. Go to savedbythebeachfest.com. That's savedbythebeachfest.com's savedbythebeachfest.com. C-O-M. All right. You do not want to miss it. This is a once in a lifetime experience. Please buy tickets, get them early because they are going to go super quick. I cannot wait to see you. And I know my other lovely co-hosts sitting here, they want to hear about your experience once you go. They have all of the open ears to hear about your experience when you're there.
You think we're unhinged on the podcast? Jesus. It's going to get
till we're in
so
paradise.
great.
Have you guys ever been to Mexico before?
I have been to Mexico.
Yeah, I love it. Mexico's sweet.
All-inclusive
Cabo.
resorts in Mexico, super good time.
So you've been to Cabo?
I've been to Cabo and I've been to Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah. Cabo is so different than Cancun and like the Riviera Maya area.
Yeah.
Because like Cabo is like deserty, but
Oh.
Cancun is like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like
Paradise.
It's a
Just
tropical
paradise.
wonderland.
It's tropical.
Of
There's the
happiness.
word I'm
Palm
looking
trees.
for.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
super tropical. There's so many different cool things that you can do. Like the excursions that you have there are awesome. There's a lot of cool old history.
Listen, let me be the first to tell you. Apparently, there are talks of a beer pong tournament.
Whoa.
And if anyone that's listening right now comes to that and beats me, I will buy your drinks for the rest of the night.
At the all-inclusive.
It's all inclusive.
It's all-inclusive,
Don't tell
yes.
them. It's all on me. Don't
What a
worry.
large,
I'll even get your stay.
offer.
No, I won't.
It's seriously going to be awesome. If you've never stayed at an all-inclusive resort before, they've got stuff for everybody. So if you want to go with your family, there's a family resort that is there. So you can have your kids there. There's always
nice.
all kinds of fun
Keep
activities.
them away from me.
And then you've got the adult side of the resort as well. So if you just want to go by yourself, go with your teacher bestie, go with your spouse, there's stuff that's going to be there. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh man, my spouse, they aren't a teacher, will they have fun? fun, they absolutely will.
They're going to have a blast. Are you kidding?
Absolutely. I mean,
It's going to be insane. It's going to be absolutely insane.
Yeah, if you think of all the people that go to the Bored Teachers Comedy Tour, I mean, there's a good chunk of people that are there that are not teachers, and they have a great time.
Yeah.
They have
the place is stuffed all the time. That's the thing. You don't want to be that guy that finds out everyone's going to it and then there are no tickets left. Just do yourself a favor. Also, it kills two birds with one stone. You're going to need a vacation at some point soon.
There you go.
You might as well do it at an all-inclusive, and you already have all of the stuff lined up that you want to watch. Go.
It's
And
be awesome.
everybody, you can relate with every single person there.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
And I said that if you show up, I'm going to do a belly flop off of something that they're probably not allowed to have me go jump off of, but I will be doing at least a minimum of one belly flop, maybe two.
I'm going to take the over on that bet. I think you'll be hitting more.
payout.
I'm taking the over. So the date for this is July 10th through the 13th. It's going to be a great experience. Check it out. Click the link in the bio or go to savedbythebeachfest.com. And just live a little, you know, if you're thinking, I really should go, but I don't know, do it.
Come see how teachers really party.
Yeah. And if you want to make it a longer stay, you don't only have to be there for the 3 days.
Yeah, if you want to pay for me to stay there for an extra week, that's cool.
There you go.
That's fine with me. I'm not going to fight you on it.
Yeah.
Don't twist my arm.
Yeah, so definitely check that out. But today on the podcast, we aren't only talking about luxury resorts in Cancun. We are talking about different lessons that our students have taught us.
It's going to get
I
deep.
love this topic.
Because as
good one.
teachers, like we are always giving a lesson. We're always talking about some sort of topic. But when we least expect it, a kid will teach us a lesson.
I feel like it's almost too common for me to just like stumble upon these lessons. Like it's never a kid walking up and being like, Mr. J, I want to teach you something. It like, and the thing is, it's like,
Although that does happen.
It actually typically comes in a time where like it's actually kind of a difficult conversation to have because when you're becoming a teacher, you realize, especially if you're in a very diverse like environment, you come to find that there are walks of life that you can't understand. And it actually kind of opens your eyes up to the reason why a lot of people are so blind about other experiences is because how often does anyone else in America get to be in a classroom with 30 people of potential 30 different backgrounds? And it's sort of like a hyper-focused opportunity to understand people's backgrounds. But like, I've had a lot of moments where I've learned very important life lessons. Like I in my first year of teaching, I made a really, really poor mistake where I was doing a lesson and there was this kid who was just like acting horrible, like saying terrible things to kids and just like being overall like really, really disruptive. And I pulled him aside and I asked him, I was like, what would your mom think about this?
Yeah.
You know, and like his mom is alive, but she's just not in his family.
Yeah.
And it was a shock for me because at the time, in my mind, that would have worked on me. It was like, what would your mom think? And I was like, my mom's going to put me through a wall. Yeah. I'm glad you asked. I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
But it's like, it helps you realize that like teachers talk a lot about like adjusting the classroom environment in order to make it more acceptable for students in terms of curriculum. But you also have to make those adjustments in terms of the kids sitting in front of you, like the small humans that are literally sitting in front of you from a million different experiences that like I don't know what that's like.
Yeah.
You know? So even as the adult in the room who's supposed to be the one like modeling these things, I don't know that existence, you know? And it gave me the opportunity, even though thank God I haven't had that experience, it helped me take a beat and think like, you need to consider all aspects of what you're about to say before you say it.
Yeah.
And it's important to experience. And obviously that child and I are cool. We got to talk about that for a while. But, you know, I think it made me much more able to handle things in the future, especially when I got into high school. Because the high school grades in Boston, it's tricky.
Yeah.
And you taught at a pretty tough place where, like, what was the type of school you're at? What's that
So
called?
I was in Boston Public Schools at a turnaround school.
Turnaround school.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
right.
So for anyone who doesn't know what a turnaround school is, basically any student that has any level of disrupted education, they'll be put into a turnaround school. But it's also like general admission as well. So there are a lot of students who just, you're right down the street, you're from one school district to the other. But a major reason why the turnaround school exists is because there are students who need separate isolated education. And a lot of the time that's because they have disrupted education patterns because of like gang involvement and homelessness and, you know, having to work. You know, I have students that have legit families.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact of the matter is that it's like a lesson that I learned very quickly is that it's like that has nothing to do with their ability to be successful and learn and develop as a person. If anything, it's going to make them more able to help their families grow and continue to thrive if I can just, you know, treat them like the fact that they are any other student.
Yeah.
You know, so you learn a lot in environments like that, and it makes me really happy that I wasn't sheltered from any of that when I started teaching, because I think if I had gone to like even the high school that I went to, like a private school outside the city, just like fully hollowed away, it's like you can learn there too. But I think that you miss very important life lessons by gaining a separate experience, a separate perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the things that kids teach me a lot is you don't know what's going on in somebody's life.
Right.
Like, it's so easy to constantly be getting on the kid who's sleeping in class or goofing around, screwing around. And it's like, oh, you don't know what's going on in their life. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't hold them to a high standard.
Right.
You should absolutely keep all kids to the same standard. Right. But 100%. You can show a kid grace. You can give a kid a little bit of slack on some things. Yeah. And it's tricky as a teacher to find that balance. What's that balance of, I want to be there for that kid, make sure that they're getting what they need. However, I still have a job to do. I'm still there to teach them something.
Exactly.
It's really tricky.
My district calls it, they always say, like, everybody has an invisible backpack. So what is everybody carrying into work today?
Yeah.
What are the kids bringing to work with them, you know, or to school with them? And so you have to stop and ask yourself, this kid's acting out for a reason, and you have to like really take a deep breath and realize that. Like, one thing that kids have taught me is that yelling doesn't help anything.
Yeah,
like
100%.
My first several years of teaching, you know, I'm a loud person in general, and I am a hothead, and I'm also very passionate. So like, I would just yell at the kids and act crazy and get red in the face. And I was like, why am I not getting results? Like, I'm laying down the law. Why isn't anybody listening to me? No. But kids don't respond that way. And it's, I mean, I'm older than the both of you, but like, so it's been a long time since I was a kid. I don't remember. They had to reteach me that kids don't respond to nastiness. So now, I mean, I don't feel like I raise my voice maybe just to hear over the chaos, but I don't really yell anymore, because they're gonna either yell back because that's what they see at home, or, you know, it's never worth it. It's not gonna get you what you want.
For a gift that's always on time and lasts a lifetime, you cannot do better than Masterclass. As teachers, we know the invaluable price of learning and learning from the best. And this gift-giving season, you can gift unlimited learning to anyone and everyone on your list this year. With Masterclass, your loved ones can learn from the best to become their best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. That's why Wirecutter calls it an invaluable gift. And Masterclass doesn't have to be a gift for someone else. You can get yourself the gift of learning with Masterclass. From fashion to acting to cooking to music, there is a class for you in whatever area you would like to become your best in. I love fashion and absorbing the latest trends and hottest styles, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not good at all with applying that to my personal style. I took celebrity stylist Carla Welch's masterclass on building and owning your personal style, and I feel so much more informed and ready to put together a closet that empowers me and works for me. I gifted my coffee snob of a husband, world champion Dave Harris's masterclass, to continue his learning on brewing the best cup of coffee, whether in the espresso machine or his pour over and practice latte art that will impress all of our friends. Don't just give your loved ones something they want. Give them something they want to be. With Masterclass, they can finally become a better cook, writer, entrepreneur, or artist, like they've always wanted. That's the gift of Masterclass. Masterclass always has great offerings during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. So head over to masterclass.com/teachers for the current offer. That's 50% off at masterclass.com/teachers, masterclass.com/teachers.
I mean, one lesson that I think it took a while for me to learn, but I mean, I had it like painted right in front of me, and I should have taken advantage of it sooner in my educational career, but it was like, just the benefit of sitting down with students early on in the year and asking them how they feel about my teaching. Because the fact of the matter is, it's like, the lights aren't on because of me.
Yeah.
The lights aren't on because of the administrator. The lights are on because the parents see what you're doing as productive. When they come home, the kid doesn't feel like they're getting beaten down by the educational system, you know? So what I do a lot, especially with like, I was in my first year at a new school at this past school year, like, I want to know if what I'm doing is working.
Right.
And I tell them that, like, I didn't sign the contract to just do one thing and like a set it and forget it strategy of teaching and then just never alter anything. Like, if the way that I'm teaching is too fast, if I'm being too loud, if I'm like not explaining something the way that you like, if you prefer videos over certain things, like, we can do that.
Yeah.
You know? And I tell them, I never make it like, you look like you need help. Because it's
right.
what I got when I was a kid. They're
Yeah.
like, you look like you need some extra time working on this. And I'm like, sick. I hate you now, and I'm going to hate you forever.
Well, you just embarrass me.
Exactly.
And like, I know teachers that are like, in the past that have said like, I'm going to, embarrass this kid or something. Well, then they're going to shut down and you've lost your chance of building a relationship with that kid.
100%.
Like, it's over. So they really need empathy from us.
Yeah.
And
I think it's so important as teachers to get feedback from our students.
Yeah.
And yes, you're going to have the kid when you ask, the class, hey, how do you think things are going so far? What can I do to improve the class? You'll have some kids that'll say, oh, don't assign homework. Let me do it. You're going to have those.
You talk too much.
Yeah. You're going to have those. But you will have the small pockets of kids that will give you pretty dang valuable feedback.
100%.
And there's so many times where I'll get that feedback. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. You don't know what you're doing until somebody tells you what you're doing wrong. So listen to your students. Try to get feedback from them because they are your clients. And at the end of the day, our job is to teach them. Yeah. We have to make sure we are giving them the proper tools so they can succeed.
Yeah, and I think that another thing that could just fix so many things about education. The education system's not just going to change overnight. There's no single thing that we can do. But I think that as the sooner that teachers start recognizing the mental health crisis that's going on in students and recognizing that it doesn't start in high school. You know, a lot of the times it peaks and sort of like rears its ugly head in high school. But a lot of teachers, they're looking at a student, and if a student is one of two things in elementary school for the past 3 decades, they're either on target or not on target. And 9 times out of 10, when they're not on target, they attribute it to a learning disability, which, don't get me wrong, learning disabilities are very much a relevant thing. But what they don't understand is, like, when you look at that realm of learning disabilities, you think ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and then it sort of branches out from there. But what they don't tell you is the mental health connection to those learning disabilities. I got diagnosed as ADHD and with onset anxiety due to ADHD at 27.
Right.
Okay. So when I was in middle school and I couldn't sit still, and my teachers literally were berating me, saying, you need to shut up, you need to sit still, you need to stop distracting everybody, and you need to get your work done. They looked at me, they're like, all right, well, he's not on par.
Yeah.
He's not doing what he needs to do. So he obviously has a learning disability. So let's take him into this other room and do this and this and this. What they didn't know was the sort of mental health situation going on with that. Because as I got older, my anxiety was horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific. Like, I always felt like the world was like ending.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why. And I was like, and when I had a day that was good, I was like, oh, wow. That's awesome.
This is rare.
Like, I'll deal with this 3 months of feeling really crappy all the time because I get one good day. I didn't realize that that's pretty friggin' ass backwards. So when I became a teacher, and especially with I'm 27 right now, but it's like with just finding out that I am the kid who has on paper a learning disability that has evolved or that has its own sort of like situation with mental health, I'm looking out for that for kids, and I was looking out for that with kids when I was teaching the younger grades, and it's as relevant then as it is now. The difference is if we could have elementary and like preschool level teachers keeping a keen eye on a student's behavior and not immediately attaching anything that's not on par to a learning disability, we can start looking at students for their specific case and not just lumping them up into a bin and just assuming that like one pill or one like isolated teaching experience is going to be the difference for them and make them feel good and able to produce.
I think like children nowadays, and this is such a great thing, is they're so much more aware of mental health problems and they know how to identify it and they know the words. Like when I was younger, I had really bad anxiety and it came out like in my tummy. Like I always had a tummy ache.
Yep.
And my parents sent me to all these doctors to try to figure out what was wrong with my stomach. And my students have taught me throughout the last couple of years that it was most likely just my anxiety. And I was really nervous
100%.
because like I've had kids come up to me and be like, you know, I'm feeling really anxious today. My tummy hurts. And like, I didn't, you know, they're so much more aware of those mental health problems now. And I'm so glad to see that. But they have to kind of teach, they don't have to, but I have felt like they have taught me a little bit about mental health issues that I didn't know about. They didn't talk about it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So
100%.
I'm glad that we can create these classroom environments where it's safe to talk about those things.
100%.
You know, so they teach me that kind of stuff all the time, just little triggers too. Like, you know, like kids will tell me like, hey, you know, just so you know, that triggers me. Like I had an alarm. I always have like a 5-minute timer up on the board with like soft music.
Sure.
But one time at the end of that 5-minute timer, like a blasting loud noise went off and a kid was like, you know, I can't handle loud noises like that. And it kind of taught me that like, that's not I'm not creating a safe environment when there's police sirens or something going off at so now I know I check my countdown timers before I put them in my PowerPoint.
Exactly.
Like little things like that. If that's what's going to make them feel safe, I can easily adapt to that. That's no problem.
And I think it's so important, like, as the conversation about mental health has been so much more prevalent in schools, we don't just leave it at, hey, here are the words, here are the feelings, here's all of this. We need to teach the coping mechanisms. We have to find a way to either properly train the teachers or have more resources for the kids and counselors and things like that in the school, so then kids can deal with it and try to get better, because it doesn't do us any good if we're just like, hey, here are all these emotions that you can feel and these are some negative emotions. Oh, we're just going to leave it at that. It's like, no, we got to try to we try to not cure the kid of anxiety, because that'll never happen, but we need to teach them how do you function with these emotions, because even as adults, we get anxious, we get nervous, we have all these things. But life still goes on. Life isn't going to wait for us. So we have to teach these skills of, you know, be gritty. Well, it is. You have to be gritty. Like, it's kind of a cliche word, but it's important.
Well, I think the next like step to that is obviously like, you're right. This generation is so much more in tune with mental health than the ones in the past. And I think that's why as time goes on, they're going to find themselves very capable of being independent, because they recognize when they're not working at full capacity. But I think that something that we need to be aware of is the fact that if you're showing signs of depression and I pull you out into the hallway and I tell you, like, I'm here for you, I got you, if you ever need anything, you come here and you ask, I'll sit here after school, before school, during lunch, whatever. That teaches you about mental health and your situation and how I can help you with that, but it doesn't teach anyone else.
Right.
So I think that when the conversation of mental health comes up, I always like to have it with everyone in the room so they recognize that, like, listen, if you feel great every day, I'm not going to say that you're like entitled for that, but not everyone does.
Right.
You know, because I've been that kid that like is looking around the room, like getting like feeling like someone's like stepping on my chest for no reason. You know, like my first panic attack was in middle school.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Like we thought it was like my asthma or something like that. No, I got wheeled out in a wheelchair. We still didn't know it was anxiety.
Yeah.
Now I can confidently tell you that it was.
Yeah.
But
Now
I
we know.
remember looking around and thinking to myself, I was like, am I about to die?
Yeah. And
you
it's
know?
terrifying.
And getting wheeled out and then brought to the hospital, my freaking heartbeat, my blood pressure was through the roof. I don't remember the exact one, but I had like a 205 heartbeat, like beats per minute.
So hard
for a while,
and especially with a kid with anxiety. Like,
but that's the thing. If we can talk about it with everyone around, then they can start to understand signs, and then it, like coping mechanisms for those going through it, but also like inclusivity mechanisms for kids who are lucky enough to not be dealing with that at the moment, but also able to, because part of the problem is like, Danny had a panic attack. He's just freaking out. He's being a lunatic.
Yeah.
That's the impression of someone who's not ready to help, you know? And half of the problem for Danny is that he thinks that everyone around him is going to start like talking smack about him because he's just acting different. Well, it's just like it's not hard to do, but you need to be able to model it.
Yeah, and like I remember one time I went to a PD, like you mentioned coping mechanisms, and someone brought up that a technique you could use for a kid who's getting really escalated is to teach them a 4-word mantra, and then for them to say it in their head with the finger movements like this. So I am super loved. I am super loved. And I was like, these middle schoolers are gonna laugh in my face when 100%. I tell them to do that.
100%.
But I was like, I'm gonna try though, because I'm a teacher. I want to try new things and I want to help my kids. And I thought they were gonna make fun of me, and I taught them that. And I was like, let's all write down our 4-word mantra. It can be anything you want. You don't have to share it with anybody. And then like 3 or 4 days later, one of my students she got upset super easily. I saw her sitting at her desk doing this with both of her, and I was like, oh my gosh, like. It taught me that, like, don't be afraid to give them those little coping mechanisms. And now I have posters in my room with 3 different types of breathing exercises.
I love that.
And it's like by the rug, and I'm like, if you feel like punching me in the face, please don't. Instead, go to the rug and do a breathing exercise. There's 3 different kinds. But like, don't be afraid to what might seem cheesy or irrelevant, or they're never going to do this. They'll surprise you, and they'll use those tools.
100%.
They want those tools.
Well, one of the things that surprises me every year is I will always ask my students, how many of you wish we didn't have smartphones? And they almost 95% of kids put their hands up and say, I wish that we didn't have smartphones. And we have the conversation of why. And they're like, we are so tired of social media and how plugged in we all are.
Yeah.
And because they feel so much pressure. And we had a really good conversation with some of my teachers about this. And we talked about, like, especially middle school girls. It seems like lately the awkward stage is gone for middle school girls. Like I see girls that come to school dressed like they are in college.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened to the
Makeup
awkward stage?
Fabulous.
Why am I still in my awkward stage?
And we had a lot of good conversations about this, and like talking about like why a lot of these middle school girls have so much anxiety is because they feel so much pressure to grow up so fast. Like they feel like they have to be looking beautiful, feel like they have to have the hair that's done and all this stuff. It's like, just be a kid. You don't need to be dressing like you are an influencer when you're 12 years old. And for some people, they want to do that. It makes them happy. Fine, go for it. If you want to be a fashionista, do it. Good for you.
Yeah.
But a lot of these girls, they don't want to do that. And same thing with like some guys. They are forced to grow up earlier and earlier and earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And it creates so much anxiety for these kids. And it's just led to so many good conversations in my classroom about, like, kids want to be unplugged. They want to, but they feel like they have to be plugged in because all of their friends are on it.
And they're going to miss something.
Yeah.
They're going to miss what everybody's talking about.
Yeah. And that's where I am not envious of parents having to make that decision of, when do I give my kid a smartphone? When do I allow them to start using social media? Because you want your kid to feel included, but you don't want to expose them to the terrible things that are on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that where the teacher comes into play there is just in like a sense of modeling. For instance, like so I'll give you sort of like the quick backup story. I think we've talked about this in past episodes before, but I don't know that I've talked about it with you before. Like, I didn't know that I had anxiety necessarily until I started having like panic attacks.
Right.
And I remember there was one, like not recently, it was last August. I was in the gym working out, and I was just like walking around after, like getting ready to leave. It had been like 20 minutes since I finished up working out. And I just started thinking about the school year and preparing for it and starting at a new school and starting in a new district and all like the licensure stuff and this and this and this.
Started piling up.
And my heart rate went up to 210 for 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That's terrifying.
Sitting perfectly still.
Yeah.
And it was pounding, and I had like this sort of like flutter where it wasn't like boom, 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 boom. It was like boom, 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 boom.
Palpitations.
It was weird.
Yeah,
it was palpitations. And I actually went to a cardiologist, got it all checked, and they're like, yeah, you have an arrhythmia. And it can go one of two ways. It can be either like a way or like a oh no way, and we have to figure that out. So during the first couple months of the school year, I actually had a surgery to get a loop recorder, like a pacemaker almost, put in my chest.
Oh, gosh.
And I did the surgery before school.
Wow.
And I went to school that day, which was ridiculous because I was supposed to be able to get it done real early, but then it went way longer than I thought it would. And when I got to school, it was a really good opportunity for me to explain to my kids, like, listen, I have this situation going on. There's no way you all would have known this. But if I had this going on and then something popped up and I screamed at one of you, that wouldn't be your fault, but it also like kind of wouldn't be mine. Here's how we separate those two situations. I suffer from anxiety. I've been suffering from anxiety for a little while. It recently hit a peak where I had what some people would call either a major panic attack or a minor heart attack. We don't really know, okay? But I'm trying to get it figured out. So I had a surgery this morning. I've been up since 5 this morning. I have a hole in my chest that was stapled up this morning. If I'm a little off, that's why. So if I'm a little quiet, that's why. And I was like, I would just really, really appreciate a little bit of understanding on that. And I need you to understand I'm not going to be at 100% for a minute, you know? And I have never in my life, and in fairness, I'm teaching, 11th and 12th graders, so they're a little bit more mature on this end. Mm-hmm. But I have never in my life had more kids who are in what some people will call a really challenging and really disrespectful school area come up to me and genuinely ask me, like, can I help you organize some stuff? Do you need any help moving things around? Yeah. What can I do for you? Would it be better if we just did something silent during this class?
Right.
All of these things. And that taught me 2 lessons. First off, modeling in that situation, especially when it comes to mental health, is crucial. And 2, we can't judge a district. Because for every single kid that makes you want to rip your hair out, there are plenty of kids that when they see you treating them like humans, they're going to treat you like humans right back. If your kids are this bad to you all of the time, there's a fairly good chance they're telling you got to switch up.
Yeah.
Are you modeling being respectful, or are you modeling screaming at people?
Yeah.
Because we already talked about it. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
When these kids found out about my actual experience with anxiety, their outlook on me fully changed.
Yeah.
And that's where they started wanting to spend time around me, because I was like, I'm not going to pretend that everyone in this classroom has anxiety, but I can talk to you about mental health and all that, and I can talk to you about what I do. I've been in therapy for a couple years. It's like,
I always talk about being a therapy person. I've been in therapy for a long time. I have depression, and I try really hard to always be honest about it, open about it. And they will show you so fast that they can turn on the empathy switch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's my favorite lesson that they learn. It's like, wow, like if you tell them you're having a bad day, they will respond positively to that most of the time. 100%. Unless you're doing something real wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then you need to switch some things up. But that's always such a beautiful reminder that we sometimes forget that they will rise to the occasion in a lot of different ways, especially being just sweethearts. I'm like, 100%. Oh my gosh, you're a little softy. You actually care about my feelings.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because, I roast my kids all the time, but we can turn it on and be sweethearts if we need to. Yeah. And it's refreshing for them to remind us of that sometimes.
Yeah, kids will surprise you when you least expect it. All of a sudden they turn it on and you didn't think that they're capable of it. And like you guys said, being vulnerable with your students at the appropriate time is good. It can help build that camaraderie and help build that rapport with students. And you're going to have situations when you do tell a kid about what's going on in your life, and you might have a kid in the corner who's laughing about it. Like you're going to have those situations. And usually you don't have those types of kids every year, but you'll have those kids. You'll have them. And I've had it before where it's like, oh, wow, I thought that kid was going to respond differently to that. And they just kind of laughed about this situation. And, because some kids can be mean. That's just how it goes.
But that's something that I think. So I posted a video the other day that was like the types of lessons that kids will really carry. Could you tell me the Pythagorean theorem?
No clue.
Okay, cool. But I had this conversation with a kid.
Is it a squared plus b squared is c?
Shut up, Gabe. Nobody asked you.
I think
it's that.
All right.
Gabe's like, of course I know what that is.
We're done with you, Gabe. But it was a conversation just about the fact that a lot of the times in your life you'll come up to something that's difficult for you, and you're gonna have 2 options. Is it under my control or is it not? If it's under my control, take action. If not, you gotta let it go. Because there are gonna be many things in your life that are fully out of your control, and it sucks and it's uncomfortable, but you gotta make do. Because it's a part of life, and becoming a adult is realizing that. It's realizing that a lot of times you just don't have a choice. And if you do, that you do, you're just deciding whether or not we're going to do something about it. you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a message of taking action when you know you can make changes, but it's also a message of like allowing yourself the weight off of your shoulders of like, listen, this is out of my control. There's nothing I can do about it right now. And that student that I had that conversation with, like, they graduate. They text me all the time. And I had a student recently reach out, and he sent me a screenshot of an email from a principal or from a professor. And the message from the student was like, Mr. J, I just wanted to let you know that you don't have to worry about me in college. Like you said, I'm going to do amazing when I really apply myself. And the message was like, hey, student, I just want to let you know that you're really doing an incredible job in this class. You bring up the classroom environment. I can tell that you're working really hard. And recently you absolutely crushed it on a project. And you know, the principal or the professor's like, I just really appreciate you being in the class.
Oh, that's cool.
Aww.
And he was like, you don't have to worry about me in college. And I'm like, Jesus.
It's like, wow,
You know?
he listened to what I said.
You know, and then that same
gosh.
student, like a week or two after that conversation about like some things are out of your control, he's coming up to me asking about like credit cards. You know, he's coming up to me asking about student loans and like repayment offers. And like, I'm helping him with scholarship essays so that he can take money off of his loans. And it's like, it expands, you know, it creates a wave, and that wave will turn into a tsunami when the kid's like, there's a lot of real stuff going on and I don't know what to do. Let's talk.
Yeah.
You know, it helps them become problem solvers instead of feeling like they're alone, you know, and that's huge, especially for a student.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that kids have taught me is kids are capable of being really resilient, and you can push them. Like it's okay to push kids.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
I've found that out where I've had kids, whether it's in sports or it's in academia, where I'll push them and I'll push them pretty dang hard, and then they end up kind of surprising themselves with what they can do.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important thing for teachers to remember is like, it's okay to push kids.
Yeah.
It's okay to have high expectations. You know, they might have something crazy going on at home, but we can still get stuff done in the classroom. We can still push it to that next level. And it's good for the kid, for them to know like, hey, I can do hard things.
Yeah.
I can persevere when my life might be in shambles at home, but I can still take care of the job when I'm at school.
Exactly.
And
no, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes students need the distraction, and they've taught me that sometimes, you know, I've learned through them, not on purpose from them, but they're like, you know what, maybe this isn't the right time to dive deep into our feelings. Let's just really focus on this paragraph right now. You know, sometimes we have to be able to read the room and see that. And so I feel like students have taught me that a lot. I'm like, wait a minute, we should, because I love to chat about my feelings, honey. I'll tell you about how I'm feeling, if I'm sad, happy, all the things. Sometimes it's better to just dive into the work, push them to those high expectations so they can rise to it.
100%.
Yeah, some kids, they don't want to talk about it, and that's fine.
Yeah, and you have
there
to
will be a
figure
time
that out.
and place, and as teachers, we want to be fixers. We want to
Oh,
fix the
I'm
situation.
like, I want to put your trauma on me. Let me help you.
Let me be the guy that let me like. And sometimes it's okay to say, I'm not the guy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the one who breaks through for you.
Let's
it might
just
be a
fight
teacher
the
down the
paragraph.
hallway.
100%.
It might be a counselor. Good. We should not be disappointed if a kid is not opening up to us, but they open up to somebody else.
Yeah.
Do not get jealous that another teacher is having a student that is telling them about all this, things going on. And
It's not always going to be you, and that's okay.
Yeah,
it's not always going to
100%.
be you.
So kind of switching gears a little bit from the warm and fuzzies right now, something that students have taught me recently that I had no clue. Kids don't really watch, at least a lot of my students, they don't like watch TV shows and movies. Like, I'm always like, what's your favorite TV show? And they're like, we don't watch TV, Miss Kowal. And I was like, well, what do you watch on Netflix? What do you watch, like, streaming? They're like, we don't watch TV, Miss Kowal. We only watch YouTube.
It's YouTube.
It's only YouTube.
Yeah.
And like,
What grade are you with again? 6th?
6th, 7th, and 8th.
Interesting.
And they're like, TV shows this old lady. And I'm, so is that a thing? Like,
get a load of this old
I
bag.
know. I'm like, am I a complete idiot? I was like,
no, it's the
what?
same way.
Okay.
Same way for me.
Not the
you
same.
see,
Like,
you
I
look
remember
like-
there was one student in my class. She was very, very, very quiet. And I have certain students, like, we were able to sort of like develop an understanding when it came to technology of like, how can you work and how can you work the most productively? And there were certain students who they were just genuinely so mature and so like productive that I could like let them watch a TV show and have it as like a side thing.
Right.
That was probably loud. Have it as a side thing, and they're just like typing away on the right side. So there was this one girl who was like really, really quiet. She always got her work done and all this. And I remember I was looking at her work and I saw on one of her tabs that she was watching Breaking Bad. And I'm like, you don't even know what you just started because I've watched Breaking Bad 9 times.
Same.
Okay, like I will probably watch that show again for a 10th time in 2025.
Just so you could talk to her about it too.
Not even that, just because like I watch 2 seconds of an episode on TikTok and I'm like, episode 1. I'm like, let's go all the way back to when he was a teacher and let's find out what we all might do.
Yeah.
But it's like, in that moment, we connected so much more because I was like, shut up. I'm like, you watch Breaking Bad? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, I love that show. And she's like, I love that show. And then as time went on, we like talked about the show and whatever. But she came up and she asked me one day, she was like, Mr. J, I'm working on my essay. Is it okay if I have the show on the side? She was like, I promise I'll still get stuff done.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, of course you can. Are you kidding me?
If you are responsible enough to ask, with, most kids, they're just going to go do it. But if you can ask, I'm like, most likely, I'm like, yeah, you can do that if you're going to ask.
9 times out of 10, a teacher will absolutely allow something if you are approaching it in a mature way.
Yeah, and was mature of her. So I'd be like, yeah, for sure, you can do that.
It's like, I don't care. It's like, what? They're swearing in the show. Have you heard my students? Are you kidding me? They say the craziest things I've ever heard in my entire life. I'd rather have them hearing it from Jesse than them screaming it at me, you know?
Well, and if they're already watching it, I'm sure their people at home know that they're watching it. But
they're adults.
I'm surprised she watches TV shows because am like, I'm trying to like relate to him. I'm like, do you watch this? Do you watch that? And they're like, no, you're a loser, Miss Kowal. Watch YouTube.
I had the same experience when I was talking with my cross country team.
Okay.
About like, what are you guys watching now?
Yeah,
and they consume such different media than we consume. Like I was talking with the girls team and we were talking about TikTokers. And I was like, oh, do you watch Alex Earl? Because I figured every girl ever watches Alex Earl. And these middle schoolers like, who? I was like, I thought that's like the person for all of you. Like I thought that's the girl.
So many niches.
And they were like, no, we don't. And one of the kids, she goes, yeah, my mom does, but I don't watch her.
You're like, oh,
that's funny.
Man.
So
I'm older than I think I am.
Yeah, and then I went to like the boys team. I was like, oh, do you guys watch this? You watch that? Like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, we consume such different forms of media.
Like I can't keep up at all.
Yeah, and YouTube for these kids now is so huge. And honestly, like I watch some of the stuff that these kids are watching because they bring it up, and then I'll tune in.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it is like the most overstimulating stuff. It's the loudest colors, the craziest personalities, all this stuff. I'm like, we are breeding ADHD. By just having all of these shows that are so overstimulating. And the kids get into it at a young age, and they think that's how like most people actually communicate in the real world. Well, it's like, no.
I do the same thing that you do. When I see that my kids are really into something,
I'm look it up.
Gonna look it up just out of like curiosity and just because like, I don't know, like not even so that I can have that moment where I'm like, yeah, I know what skibbity toilet is. Like, no. But also just because it's like, who am I to not be in the know with these students?
Right.
So, you ever heard of Five Nights at Freddy's?
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Don't go any further than that.
What is it? Like,
it's like a scary video game.
It's exactly what you're talking about, though. They turned into a movie and a TV show.
And there's a bunch of manga, too.
There's a bunch of manga about it.
Brian, our producer there, he's like,
it's just like, chef's kiss. It's exactly what you talked about. It's this hyper stimulating, so much like it's a little scary and a little silly and like
bright
all
colors
colorful
everywhere,
and all this. And it's almost like a modern day. It's not the same, but it reminds me a lot of like Ed, Ed and Eddie.
Oh yeah.
There's just like I can see
just
that.
Some characters just like meant to just like allow like to force you to watch all the way through. Mm-hmm. But with these kids, like the scary stuff really resonates with them.
They love
it.
I love that stuff too.
I watched
it
and I looked over to my kids. I was like, "Hey Marvin, I checked out FNAF Friday Night at Freddy's.
FNAF?
Who hurt you? What? Like literally, and even in that moment, the kids could have done one of two things. They could have been like, why is he judging me for what I'm watching? But they know that I watched it because it's like, I want to be able to understand them as much as I can. And sometimes that comes through. Like I watched Attack on Titan.
Yep.
Ever watch that?
What's that?
Good for you.
It's anime, right?
It's anime with these giant zombies that are trying to attack this village that has this enormous wall that blocks everyone out, right? Have you seen that? Okay, thank you. So I'm not losing my mind. There are these giant, naked, de-skinned giants, and they're like trying to attack. I guess they're called
scary
the Titan.
looking.
They're terrifying, and they just like waltz over like Frankenstein's. And the first episode is basically them getting over the wall, and then our main character's like mom gets eaten or something. I think she gets like ripped in half. Am I wrong? Okay, yeah. She gets like ripped in half, and then like her body gets dropped in front of our main character, and it's crazy. And a student was like, I really like this show. You should watch it. And I'm like, okay, 6th grader, cool. I'll do that.
I'll do it.
So I watch it, and I come back, and I'm like the animation's cool.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Again, who hurt you?
Yeah.
But then it's like we connect so much more because it's that proof that you'll give them a chance.
Yeah.
It's that proof that you'll give them a chance, that you're not there to judge.
Right.
I have so much dumb stuff that I watch every single day. They would say the same thing to me. So who am I to judge?
One thing that I've noticed, so, in the ELA world, you would know like a big hot topic is are graphic novels and manga really valuable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had never really gotten into anime or manga or graphic novels for that matter. And when you talk to a kid that reads manga, like they know how to analyze a text.
Yeah.
And they've shown me how valuable those are. So 1 year I spent a ton of money just getting graphic novels for my classroom library because they love them. Like we do have a generation of readers.
Yeah.
They're just reading something that looks different. Like it's not some classic Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It's something that's, there's pictures involved and it's okay. And they are using some high level analytical skills that I didn't know was possible with some people are like, these are picture books. I'm like, no, these are series.
That's
like
because
30
for the past 60 years, the people who have been in charge of making the decisions in schools are people who haven't been in a classroom for 30 years, the majority of their lives. The last time that they taught, we were in a separate world war, and they don't decide to take the time to understand what's going on inside of the schools. They're dead set on teachers being authoritarians and making sure that every kid's sitting up straight but not with their back touching the chair. Right. But they don't have the willingness to understand that school's not the same as it used to be. And if you keep trying to shove this down their throats, they're going to continue rebelling and not coming into school and essentially not getting anything out of school, when in reality it's a goddamn shame, because kids can come in, be recognized, try something, challenge themselves, and really feel prepared when they leave. And every kid wants to do that.
Yeah.
No kid comes into school wanting to just start problems.
Right.
Because it just puts more stuff on them that they don't want to have to deal with anyway. It makes them feel bad about themselves, but they get pushed into a classroom with people being run by these administrators who don't actually care about what they need. Like when I was teaching Shakespeare, I was teaching Hamlet to 6th graders.
Hamlet to 6th graders?
Hamlet to 6th graders.
That's intense.
So
I don't know if I've ever even read Hamlet.
Read Hamlet.
When I was in school, man, all of those classic literature
Hamlet's
stories,
amazing.
I just spark noted the heck out of them.
Yeah.
I thought they were so boring.
Well, I went to London recently and I got to see the Sphere.
Oh,
Nice.
how cool. I
Not
love
the Sphere,
Shakespeare.
the Globe.
The Globe, yeah. I knew what you were saying.
Yeah. No, but the hell was I saying?
I saw you two at the Sphere.
But that's the thing. It's like school has been made out for so many years to be like, you're going to do it the traditional way because the traditional way worked, because back then when the school was run this way, our kids were ready to get enlisted into a war and they were productive, they were heroes. So however it worked then, it works now. It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not. Parenting's not the same. Being a child is not the same. You can't even hold a candle to the amount of stimuli that kids go through every single day. And you still expect them to pay attention when you do a lesson on Macbeth.
Right.
Right? Just because I love Macbeth doesn't mean they love Macbeth. You need to be able to see through the context of yes, school is meant to prepare you for the real world. It doesn't mean you have to start getting beaten down the way the real world does.
Right. And I just thinking about cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone in middle school, and I got my first cell phone in high school, and I didn't have text messaging. I mean, I had Snake, and I could call my parents and anybody past 7 p.m. It was back then. And I love telling my students that because they don't believe it. They think I'm younger than that. They're like, no way. hey, Miss Kowal, you're not ancient. I'm like, well, yeah, I am. But like they've had to, you were talking about that, the girls, like being a middle school girl and stuff. And I've really had to learn, like, what would that feel like to always be stimulated, always be on your phone, always be engaged. And one thing that's taught me as a teacher is like 5 minutes or less, and then we're switching gears.
Yeah.
Like we gotta be doing a different activity every single 5 minutes. I had someone come observe me one time. They were like, "You're just constantly switching it up, and the kids keep up." I'm like, "That's what they're like right now. That's because of the technology that they're growing up with. Like that's their life.
100%.
So I have to match that energy, or I'm gonna lose them."
Oh, the reason I brought up Hamlet is because I realized that like, so we were using sort of like an altered version that had more modern words, which is amazing. I would recommend that to anyone who's teaching Shakespeare in any way, shape, or form. But
No Fear Shakespeare or something like that.
The No Fear Shakespeare is good, but it's a little like almost too simplified. They have modernized texts that are remade in a bunch of different ways. You'll still get the entire like plot in like the character analyses. But I found this like company that makes graphic novels of Shakespeare books.
Yes.
I gave it to one kid who could not understand anything going on. And he was reading. So all of the text is still grade level text.
Yeah.
All of it. All the vocabulary, all like the punctuation, all of this. It's all state correct.
Yeah.
And he accidentally finished it.
Oh.
Really?
So we're 2 months until the end of the text, and he's like, why does everyone die at the end? And I'm like, you
don't ruin it for everybody.
I'm like, damn it, Danny, what's wrong with you?
Yes.
You know, so it's like, but he came up to me, he was like, Mr. J, I finished a book.
Oh, isn't it like when a kid says, "This is the first book I've ever finished"? I want to cry so much. I'm like,
but as a sixth grader,
we did it. How amazing is that?
As a sixth grader, how many years did he think that he was just the idiot of the class?
Yeah.
When in reality, he's just like me.
And he's
just
successful.
learn a different way.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
I love that.
That's awesome.
No, I mean, we were saying before this episode started that it's really beautiful that when I was in middle school and when I was in, honestly, high school too, I had a lot of teachers that would tell me that I talked way too much and that I was really annoying and that I was really loud. I tapped my fingers, I tapped my feet because I had undiagnosed ADHD and anxiety. But they would just tell me to really just like shut up. And now I'm 27 being brought in to sit down and talk to you guys so that people can watch it. It's like, it's the craziest, like the thing, like obviously like the Cancun trip is going to be incredible, but like getting invited to go on this tour where people are going to come and see me talk.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's something so beautiful about that. But I think that in a weird way, like my recognition of that right now is another form of modeling that like, it gets so much better.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like a really beautiful thing to see everything that I'm talking about now, like actually being put into work, because it's just like, it's something that you don't think about every single day, especially not as an adult. You think that there's so much better things to line up. It's just beautiful.
That's one of the things that my team, we talk about a lot is with middle schoolers, where do you draw the line on they're being disruptive versus they're just having a personality?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's so important as teachers to be like understanding of kids are going to have big personalities. That's fine. It's okay for them to have personalities. It's okay for them to be creatives and to be talkers and to be all this stuff. So how do you take those skills that they have, which is creativity, which is being a talker, all this stuff, and make it so they can apply that to what you're supposed to be learning. Yeah. And it's hard. Like I was just at a conference a couple weeks ago and we were talking about all this cool things Adobe has, Adobe sounds kind of boring, you think about this stuff, but then you look at some of these people that were presenting, all these artists, all these creatives, and they talked about their school experience. And each of these artists have a very similar story of they had one teacher that said, hey, I see you're really good at X. Yeah. Let's try to make you even better at that. Yeah. So like for me, as somebody who teaches 7th grade science, how do I find a way to help a kid who is a very talented artist? Yeah. How do I apply that into my lesson about teaching about biomes? Yeah. Like it's really hard. It's extremely challenging, but there's a way that you can be creative and you can do that. And like one of the lessons that my students have taught me is they're creative. They are very creative.
Incredibly.
They have these skills that are so unique. and we got to find a way to actually run with those and compliment them on those. And so then they can be adults like us, where we make social media content. We sit and yap and talk about different things that we believe and don't believe, and all the things that we do. Like, kids are creative. We need to find a way to show them that their skills are useful.
100%.
I've had students, when we're doing some sort of a project, I've had them come up to me and say, you know what, is there any way I could present this knowledge in a different way? And they already have the idea and they pitch it to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, like I do choice boards a lot, so that whatever, if you're a writer, you can write something. If you are an illustrator, you can do that. But like, I've had kids come up to me and pitch ideas to me, and like, trust the kids, because if they say like, I really want to do this, like one kid was like, I want to make a playlist to represent like my analysis of this novel. And I was like,
that's sick.
Yeah, I was like, let's do it. Like, I'm not a musical person at all. I have no musical talents whatsoever. And I was like, let's see it. And he picked out different songs and wrote like a paragraph of how this song connected. And he was like citing evidence from the lyrics. I was like, this is incredible. I would have never thought of that myself. Yeah. And sometimes we just have to like trust our kids, and they can demonstrate knowledge in all sorts of different ways.
100%.
And I love that education is going that way. Because I mean, we had one choice when I was in school, like, this is, you're writing your 5-paragraph essay. This is your only route. And now we're trusting kids that they can do it in different ways.
Sucks.
Yeah.
And isn't it so incredible that you had that experience similarly to I had that experience of like, you're going to do school this way, and you're going to be able to do this, and the kid next to you is going to be able to do this. And we all ran in the direction of a career where you're able to change that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so crazy.
Cool.
I read this quote the other day where it was like, sometimes I feel like you become the person that you needed as a kid. And I'm like, time to sit in the dark all day.
Oh, man.
It's like, it's so funny, but it's like, we're in such a funny time of life where we have such a clear understanding of what like the come up was. Yeah. And now we're here. And I think it's like, I don't know, it's kind of beautiful that we're able to sort of like talk up and down, because I think personally, I believe that idea of, like, if you're in an older generation than what you're working with, especially if you're a teacher, you should be actively working to understand the students that are sitting in front of you. Right. Like 100%. In college, I had this, she's actually the head of the education department at Emmanuel College where I went to school. Her name's Sister Karen. She's fantastic. She's the best person I've ever met. But she would be teaching these lessons, and she was like, she's the pinnacle of teaching. She's the best person in the world. And she would like talk to us, and you can tell that she's going out of her way to just like know that she doesn't think that we're weird for what we like in our generation. She's on TikTok. She watches my TikTok. Aww. She follows all my social medias, and she loves the trends and all this, and she talks to me about it all the time. She was the one who told me that. I was like, you got to keep up. Because you think you're not old, but like compared to a 6th grade class, we're old. Yeah. And they deserve to be understood as much as we deserve to be understood. So when you go out of your way to understand them, they're going to hand it right back to you. Sorry, I'm still going through puberty. Yeah. It happens to the best of us.
You're good.
Y'all, this has been such a fun episode.
Yeah, it really
I feel
has.
very like warm inside thinking about all these lessons that I've learned from my babies.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to cry on the way home.
Yeah, so let us know in the comments, what are some lessons that your students have taught you? Because we learn things all the time from the youth. They are very bright. They are very young, very full of energy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And don't worry, we'll talk about all the lessons that we learn after we're done in Cancun.
Yes.
Just trust me.
Check the link down in the description to go get your tickets for the Saved by the Beach Comedy Fest. It's going to be awesome. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.